Today we're going to talk about Election Day. In the United States on November 8th, it was Election Day. And this is not voting for the president, but it's voting for other people in the government. And today we're going to talk a little bit about who those people are and the different parts of the government and a little bit about what they do. We're not going to go into too much detail, so don't get scared. I won't make you memorize people's names and stuff, but just get the main idea of how the US government works, okay? So this week, if you open up the New York Times, you might see something like this. Oh my God, that's too much information. And it's kind of confusing. Why is it red? Why is it blue? What is the Senate? What is the House? Oh my God. Biden cheers the results. Why? Why is he happy? And as Congress remains in play. Oh my God, what the heck is Congress? There are a lot of new words in here. It's pretty complicated. And that's okay. As we go, we're going to take a look at some of these ideas. Not everything, but some of the main ideas. And it will help you kind of figure out what the heck we're looking at here. And if you are interested in the United States or government or business or travel, all of these things are kind of important because the way that people vote in America can affect, well, America, but also the rest of the world in many different ways. So it might not seem that important to understand what's going on here, but actually it might affect you somehow, okay? So we're going to take a look at this page later, so don't worry about trying to figure it out right now. But we're going to start talking about what it means to vote. What happens on Election Day? So first up is the word to vote. To vote means you take a piece of paper and you say who you want. Like if there's two people who want to be president, to vote means to choose the person you want. Okay? You write down, oh, I want that guy, and then you vote. Okay? And so to vote is the action, what you do. Now, where do you vote? Now people sometimes will mail in their vote, but usually people will go to a voting booth. A voting booth is this little box where you go to a place where everyone's voting and you walk in to a voting booth, and that's where you actually do your vote. It's a booth, meaning kind of like a little compartment, a little space, because you want to keep your vote secret. Maybe you don't care, but a lot of people want to keep it secret, so they go into a voting booth. Then you can mark who you want to vote for secretly. Shh, don't tell them. I don't care. You can know who I vote for, but a lot of people want to keep it a secret. Okay? And then practicing it, we can make a sentence. So you need to go to a voting booth to vote. So this is a very common thing in the United States. You go to a place like a voting station, I think. Don't ignore that part. A place where you can vote, and then when you're in there, you go to a voting booth, write on the paper, and that's how you vote. Now, what is that paper called? There's a special word for a paper that you write your vote on. It's called a ballot. So you take a ballot, you mark who you want to vote for, and then you put it in this big box called a ballot box. Okay? This is kind of a simple box, but a ballot box is not very different. Maybe it has like a motor to like suck in your ballot, that kind of thing. So you vote at a voting booth, then put your ballot in a ballot box. So you might hear this instruction. Please put your completed ballot into the ballot box. That sounds kind of almost like a tongue twister. please put your completed ballot into the ballot box. So they might actually say that. So we're describing the ballot, saying it's completed, meaning you finished voting on that paper. And then you put it inside the ballot box. Then you can go home. Easy peasy, right? Now, this is what you do, what we do to vote for someone. But who are we voting for? Well, there are a couple different words we need to know. The first word is a candidate. Candidate. So it's candidate. This looks like date, but you don't need to say date. Candidate. That's too hard. Say it like it's D-E-T. Det. Candidate. Okay? 3 parts. So a candidate is someone who wants to become a leader. They want to become the president or want to be part of the government. They're not. Right now, they're a regular person, maybe. Or they want to get chosen to become part of the government. Okay? That's called a candidate. And what do you do to a candidate? Well, if they get lots of votes, you elect a candidate. So there's this person, and the regular people who vote will elect them, meaning they choose them for the government. Okay? So candidate is before they get chosen. Elect means get chosen for government. And after they get elected, they become a representative. So you can see inside this word, we have represent. So a representative is a person who represents other people. So what does that mean? That means this one person goes to the government and does stuff, but they are doing it for us. Like we voted for them, so they are representing us. They're doing stuff to help us. Okay? So that's where the word representative comes from. Representative. All of these T's kind of sound like D's. Representative. Okay? So a candidate gets elected and becomes a representative. So let's use these words in sentences. The candidate from San Francisco didn't get enough votes to win. So they didn't get enough votes, so they were just a candidate. They wanted to be part of the government, but they didn't go into the government. They didn't get elected. Okay? And then representative, we could say, Jane Doe was elected as LA's representative in Congress. Okay? We'll talk about what Congress means later. But this means this lady, Jane Doe, she was elected. That means she was chosen. And chosen as what? Here the as is kind of like to be. She was elected as something. So chosen to be LA's representative in Congress. So she's going to Congress, which is part of the government, and she's going to represent LA, Los Angeles. So when she votes, she says, my vote is to help Los Angeles and the people of Los Angeles. Okay? So you could say that place's representative. Okay? So maybe if it's Taiwan's government, you might say, oh, my neighborhood has a representative who goes to the government and votes for me. Okay? So candidate is before they get elected. Representative is after they get elected. Okay? Now, let's talk about the United States. And we're going to talk about some parts of the government. And then we're going to talk about what's going on with the election right now. And the government is broken into 3 branches. You can think of the government as a tree, like one big tree. And there are 3 branches coming off. A branch meaning like a part, okay? And so in the United States, there are 3 branches. And that means 3 important parts of the government. The one you probably know the most is called the executive branch. Okay? So the executive branch, this is run by the president. So the leader of the executive branch is the president. And that's right now Joe Biden. Okay? And what is the job of the executive branch? Well, you can see executive. This is an adjective telling us about the branch. Which branch? Well, it's the executive branch. And you can look inside this word. It looks like execute. To execute means to get things done. So what is the job of the executive branch? Well, they're trying to get things done. Other parts of the government will plan things and maybe organize things. And then the executive branch is supposed to actually do it and move things and get things happening. Okay? So think about that. Executive is like to execute. There's a plan and we're going to do it. We're going to get things done. And the executive branch, the most important building is the White House, which is where the president lives and a lot of the people around him work. Okay? So that's one branch of the government, the executive branch. Another branch is called the judicial branch. Okay? This is branch number 2, the judicial branch. And the big important building for the judicial branch is called the Supreme Court. Okay. Let's take this piece by piece. So the judicial branch, what they actually do, they judiciate. But that's a big word. We don't need to remember it. It's okay. So judicial, the easy way to think about this is it kind of looks like judge. Okay? And to judge is to decide if laws are fair or not. Okay? So what they do, they will look at the law and say, hey, is this fair? If it's fair, they say, we're going to keep that law. If they say it's not fair, maybe they get rid of it or say we have to change it. Okay? So the job for the judicial branch is to judge if laws are fair. Okay? The easy way to remember this is judicial and judge both start with J-U-D. Okay? Then the Supreme Court. It's this building. A court is a place where you deal with the law, right? So the Supreme Court is the place where you deal with the law, but it's supreme, meaning it's the number one. It's the most important one. And so this is the most important court in the United States. And the Supreme Court is made up of 9 people. And those 9 people can stay in their job for life. They can stay there forever until they pass away. So that's very important, right? So if someone becomes part of the Supreme Court, they can stay there for a long, long, long time, right? These people are called justices. So a justice of the Supreme Court. So there are 9 justices of the Supreme Court. And imagine, I'm 37. If I somehow became a justice of the Supreme Court, maybe I could stay there until I was for 50 years or something. If I stayed alive until I was 87, I would be on the Supreme Court for 50 years. That's a huge, crazy thing. Of course, usually the justices aren't that young. Maybe they'll join when they're 60 or something. But if you're 60 and you stay alive until you're 80 or 90, that's still a really, really long time on the Supreme Court, right? So these people are actually really important because they can change the government by saying this law needs to be changed. This law we need to keep, right? If they say this law that has been around for a long time needs to go, that's a huge change, right? So we have to pay attention to the Supreme Court. Maybe you don't see them in the news here in Taiwan very often, but they're really important. Now, the next branch of government is a little bit complicated, and this is the part that people are voting for in America right now, or voted for on Tuesday. Sorry. We're still seeing the results come back right now. So the third branch of government, we had the executive, get things done, judicial, decide if things are fair, and then third is the legislative branch. Okay? Now that's a hard word, legislative. What does this branch do? Well, they legislate. Legislate is a fancy word, which means to make laws, basically. So their job is to create laws for the country. And that could mean making a budget, meaning how much money the country should spend, or changing the rules of the country, right? Making any kind of laws. That's legislating. So the legislative branch, their job is to legislate or make laws, okay? Now, a common word for the legislative branch, we call it Congress, okay? And so Congress is all of the legislative branch together. And Congress goes to this building called the Capitol building, okay? This is not the White House. Be careful. The White House doesn't have this big dome. This is called the Capitol building. And so inside the Capitol building, in Congress, there are two parts, okay? Hold on, bear with me. This is complicated, but we'll get there. There are two parts. One part is called the Senate. So that's called the upper part of Congress. The Senate and the people in the Senate are called senators. Okay? We'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute. The other part of Congress is called the House of Representatives. House of Representatives. We already talked about the word representative before, right? They are representing a group of people. And so these people are called representatives. Senators have a different name because they're a little bit different. We'll talk about why, okay? But there are two different groups, the Senate and the House of Representatives. And right now in America, we're still deciding both groups, okay? Or based on the votes. People are looking at those votes. Now, what is the House of Representatives? This is the big one. This is, there are 435 voting members of the House of Representatives. You can just call it the House, okay? There are 435 members. That's crazy, right? That's a lot of people. And so the House is pretty complicated, and they do a lot of stuff. And this is called the lower part of Congress because each person is not as powerful as the other part of Congress. But why? Well, think about it. There are 435 people here, so each person is not that powerful, okay? And also, each person stays here for 2 years, okay? So they have a 2-year term, meaning that they work for 2 years, but then they need to get elected again if they want to stay, okay? So because of that, because there are a lot of representatives and they're only there for 2 years, they're not super powerful, but this is still a really important part of the government. And so why are they called representatives? They're representatives for a group of people in an area. So that means the government counts people. And so for each group of people, like a number of people, they will get one representative. So like maybe one town has one representative. Maybe. Or maybe a bigger town might have 2 representatives. Okay? So it's based on how many people are in a place. And because of that, the number of members can actually change based on how many people are in the United States. If there are more people, we need more representatives, okay? And then also, because it's based on how many people are in a place, that means bigger states will have more votes. California has like 50 million people or something like that. And so California has way more votes than a smaller state like Rhode Island or something. So bigger states have more votes, which could be fair or not fair based on what you think, right? There are more people there, so maybe they should have more votes, right? I don't know. You could argue either way. Now, the leader of the House of Representatives is called the Speaker of the House. So this is Nancy Pelosi. She came to Taiwan recently. She is the Speaker of the House, meaning she's the leader of this group of people. And that's a pretty important position. So she's the leader of this big group, and the big group of 435 people, right? So she's the leader of this huge part of the government. And what does the House do? The House tries to start making laws. They pass bills, is what we say. And they send the bills to the Senate, okay? So a lot of times the House is the beginning of a law. They'll first pass a bill. A bill is kind of like a plan for a law. So everybody in the House votes for it. If it passes, then they say, okay, we agree, we want this to be a law. But that doesn't make it a law. It needs to go to the next step. They send the bill to the Senate. Now, what is the Senate? The Senate is the other part of Congress, okay? And the Senate has 100 voting members. And each of those people is called a senator, okay? And senators are generally more powerful than people in the House. Why? Well, there are only 100 of them, so there are less people, so each person has more power. And also, when you become elected a senator, you get a 6-year term. So even longer than the president. You become a senator and then you stay a senator for 6 years. That's pretty long. Okay? And the 100 is because there are 50 states. There are 2 senators per state. And so that means that every state has equal power. In the House, bigger states have more power because they have more people. But in the Senate, a small state will have the same amount of power as a big state because they both have 2 senators. And so that can mean that it helps the little states stay represented. They get a say in the government. They don't need to worry so much. So some people might say, okay, the House is good because where there are more people, they should have more votes. But then other people will say, oh, the Senate's good because small states get protected because they're powerful too. Okay? Now, in the Senate, there are 2 very important guys. One is called the Majority Leader. So right now, this guy, Chuck Schumer, he's the Majority Leader. The majority means the party that has the most people. That's the majority, the most. Okay? So this guy, his party has the most people, the Democrats. So that's the majority party. This other guy, he is the minority leader. He's the leader of the group that has less people in the Senate. Okay? But both of them are very powerful and important people because the people in their party will talk to them. Oh, you're the leader, we're going to talk to you. Okay. So the way it works, the House tries to pass a bill. And then that bill gets sent to the Senate. In the Senate, they will discuss and vote on that bill. And if they decide, hey, we want this bill to happen too, we want it to become a law, they vote yes, and it's still not finished. What they do is they will vote yes and send it to the president. So, this sentence is what I wrote. The Senate often receives a bill from the House and votes on whether or not to pass it to the president to sign into law. So, the House votes on a bill, then the Senate votes on a bill. If they like it, then they send it to the president, and the president can sign it and make it a law. Okay? The president could also veto it. Veto means say no, but that's another story. Usually it goes House, sends it to Senate, sends it to the president, and if the president says okay and signs, then it becomes a new law. But you can imagine with all of these people, 435 people and 100 people, it's hard to agree on things and hard to get things finished, right? Now, in these groups, there are people from two different parties. We just mentioned the majority and the minority. There's like one party will have the most people, one will have the least people. And in the United States, there are two major parties. There are a few little ones, but they're not very powerful. So let's just talk about these two big ones. The two major parties in America are called the Democrats and the Republicans. Okay? The Democrats are represented by a donkey. I don't know why. And then the Republicans are represented by an elephant. I don't know why. Maybe we should do some research. But yeah, the Democrats are the donkeys. Well, we don't say that, but they're represented by a donkey. The Republicans are represented by an elephant. Seems like a baseball team or something, right? And so some famous Democrats that you might know, Barack Obama is a Democrat, and Joe Biden is a Democrat too. These are the two most recent Democrat presidents. And then the other side is the Republicans. There's George W. Bush and Donald Trump. These two presidents were Republicans. Okay? And so the Republicans and the Democrats are the two parties, and the people in the House and the Senate, most of them come from those two parties also. And so you split these groups almost in half, and you find out, okay, are there 51 Democrats and 49 Republicans, or something different than that? Okay? Now, what makes these groups different? The Democrats, we call them blue. Okay? The blue party. The logo has blue and red, but we call the Democrats the blue party. The Republicans, same thing. The logo has both colors, but they're the red party. So if you see a map, if it's blue, that means Democrat, red means Republican. Now, the Democrats are generally liberal, okay? While the Republicans are generally conservative. Now, what does that mean? Liberal means that they kind of want to change things. Generally speaking, that liberal people want to change things and are trying to make things better, okay? Make things better by changing things, okay? People who are conservative. Conservative means that they want to keep things the same so things stay good, okay? Liberals want to make things good by changing things. Conservatives want to keep things good by not changing things. That's kind of the main idea. Liberals think, oh, we could be better. Conservative thinks, we're already good, we don't need change. That's kind of like the main idea. There's way more to it, like for money. Maybe the liberals want to spend more money to change the government. Conservatives want to save money to protect the government, okay? And so these are the main ideas, liberal and conservative, generally. Another way to talk about the Democrats and the Republicans, if you're liberal, you could say you're left. So it doesn't have to be Democrats, but if you believe in those kinds of feelings, like we need to change the world to make it better, you could say you're on the left. If you think, oh, we should keep things the same to keep the world safe, you might be on the right, okay? So blue versus red, left versus right, liberal versus conservative. And that's what those two parties are. Now, if you're someone in the middle, there might be some other words you could use. So blue and red are two colors, but if you get a color in the middle, you get purple. So there are some states in America that we call purple states. Like I think Virginia is a purple state. It's a little bit Democrat, it's a little bit Republican, everything's mixed together, so it's a purple state, okay? And then if you are somewhere in the middle of liberal and conservative, you're not sure, you're kind of in the middle, you like some of both, you might be called a moderate. Moderate is kind of like medium, M for medium. So you're not liberal, you're not conservative, you're in the middle, you're moderate, okay? Easy way to say that, left and right. Maybe you're in the center if you like some of both, okay? And so someone like Joe Biden, he's not really far left. You might call him left center or something like that, okay? So you could have far left, far right, left center, right center, or just center, okay? Okay. Now, let's rewind, go back to that New York Times page. Now, maybe we can figure out what the heck we're looking at. This is from a few hours ago. And so I don't think it probably hasn't changed yet, but maybe. So Biden cheers results even as Congress remains in play. So Biden is saying, okay, things are pretty good. He cheers the results, meaning like, yeah, results, yay, okay. Even, so this is kind of like showing contrast, even as, so he's cheering, but something else seems like maybe he shouldn't be cheering yet. Congress remains in play. So Congress means both the Senate and the House together, both of them, okay? Congress remains in play, meaning that both parts, Senate and the House, could go either way. They could go for his party, the Democrats, or the other way. So in play means that it's not finished yet. They're still playing, they're still figuring out who the winner is. What you can see here, full Senate results. Now remember, the Senate, that's that group of 100 people. And so they're trying to figure out which party is going to control the Senate. The Senate is the more powerful part of the government. So if one party can control the Senate, that's really good for that party. So right now, Democrats have 48 seats or 48 senators, and the Republicans have 49. So that looks like the Republicans might be winning, but actually maybe not, because the Democrats flipped one seat. That means one seat, one position used to be Republican, but they flipped it, meaning they changed it from red to blue. So the Democrats took one seat away from the Republicans. So maybe the Democrats might take control of the Senate. And you might think, wait, but the Republicans are leading. But these two states, maybe they might have a Democrat win or something. I'm not sure yet. Okay? So if you look at this map, you'll see the states that voted Democrat and the states that voted Republican pretty easily. Blue is the Democratic one, and then the red is the Republican. Okay? Same thing with the House, the full House results. 189 Democrats, 207 Republicans. This line in the middle, the 218, is the number of seats they need to control the House. So if they have 219, that means they are controlling the House. Right now, it looks like the Democrats are behind, but again, we're not sure yet because this middle section, people are still counting the votes and figuring it out. Okay? So yeah, the Senate means the group of 100 people that get elected, 2 per state. The House means people get elected based on where they come from and where they live and how many people are there. Okay? And so it's an interesting thing to see the map and like what parts of America are blue and what parts are red. And you might be wondering, last thing, is that these other parts are gray. What does that mean? Well, that means they're not voting this time around. Remember that the people in the Senate are for 6 years. The people in the House are for 2 usually. And so this is for Senate. This map is for Senate. That means that the people in these grayed out states aren't voting for Senate this time around. Maybe they voted for Senate 2 years ago. Okay? Because it's every 6 years. But then the House would be more places. Okay? So that's a lot of stuff, a lot of information. But the main idea is that the government has 3 parts. Executive branch, that they get things done. The judicial branch, they decide if laws are fair. And then the legislative branch, they make the laws. They do more stuff, but that's the main idea. And then we talked about this. This is called Congress, the people who make laws. And they're divided into the House and the Senate. And that's what people in America are voting for this week. And, well, people voted on Tuesday. Now we're still counting the votes. And it takes a while, right? And so it'll be interesting to see how everything ends up. If one party takes control of the Senate and the House, that can be really powerful for their party because it's easier to vote for things. If one party controls one thing and the other party controls the other, things get interesting because maybe one party tries to do something, but then the other party stops it in the next part of Congress. So, very complicated, but hopefully interesting. Learning about red versus blue and all the different parts of the government. So, I think that's where we can stop here for today about the U.S. government and election day this week. So, election day is coming up here in Taiwan pretty soon. So, maybe you guys could tell me, are there similar parts of the Taiwanese government? Do you have people that you vote for? Do you see any connections between the left and the right versus the parties in Taiwan? I don't want to start a fight about politics or anything, but I think it's interesting to discuss these things. And it'll be interesting to see what happens on election day here in Taiwan too, right? And so hopefully today's stream was interesting and taught you a little bit about what actually is going on in America right now. So if you see the news, hear about the House or the Senate or the Republicans and the Democrats, blah, 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 hopefully this stream, this talk helped you out and brought some things to light, maybe made it easier for you to understand, okay? So I think we can stop here for today. I hope you had a good time. If you have any questions, please leave me some questions and comments. Don't be shy. I'm happy to help. And yeah, let's take a look at the news and see what happens in the next couple days. Okay? So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful night, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.